Welcome to another episode of The Couch Therapists, a podcast by AHAM Centre for Therapy, where we dig deeper into all things psychology and mental health. I am Richa, your newly hatched therapist and couch therapist, and with me I have the seasoned and experienced Miss Ishwari, who is the expert for REBT and ACT. So, a very warm welcome, ma'am.
Hi, hello. How is your day going, Richa?
I'm very well. My day has been a little hectic, but I'm enjoying it. How's it for you?
It was a slow start for me. So after this recording, then I have the next tasks lined up. So looking forward to discussing today's topic with you.
Amazing. So let's tell our listeners what the topic is about. It's a very thought-provoking topic, and it's called the big word perfectionism. So that is what we're going to talk about today. So should we get right into it?
Yes, let's go.
Okay, so let's first start by understanding what is this big crown word perfectionism. Hota kya hai? What is it that a lot of people think that it's a strength, but actually some people think it's not. So maybe you want to tell us what is perfectionism?
Okay, so before commenting on whether it is a strength or weakness, let me just talk about perfectionism first. So it's essentially an innate force or a very internal need to constantly be up to the mark with everything that a person is doing, with no space for flaws, for no space for improvement of any sort. So it has to be 100%, or then it's just not good enough. So that is perfectionism in a nutshell.
Yeah. Right. And to put it in a analogical form, it's probably like walking on a tightrope. Where idhar kuwa idhar khai types. It's a very tight rope that people are walking on. And sometimes it's beneficial, it gets the tasks done, but it's also a very slippery rope. So it leads to setting up a very high standard for oneself, accompanied by a lot of relentless pursuits of flawlessness, right? Okay, so what do you think? Is it a strength or is it actually a flaw?
Well, like most things in life, anything that is done excessively can very quickly turn into a weakness. So even in terms of perfectionism, I would say that there is an adaptive perfectionism which can really help you to be very committed to the task that you're doing, paying attention to the details, going that extra mile to get a task done. So that would be perhaps the adaptive side of perfectionism. But there is a lesser spoken side, which is the darker or the maladaptive side of perfectionism, wherein it just creates more and more obstacles in your path to doing any task. And secondly, that in spite of doing a task as best as you can, you are just never satisfied with what you're doing. So there is a very constant reach for more, which is marked by maladaptive perfectionism.
Absolutely. And to summarize what you just said, how I see it, it's like a two-faced funnel.
Yes.
One with a smaller side and one with a bigger side. So I was recently, interviewing somebody, and I asked them what are their strengths and qualities, and they said, I'm a perfectionist. So that got me thinking that, which side of the funnel are they talking about?
Right. How did they mean that? Like, did they talk about it in terms of strengths, or did they mean that it's a problem for them?
I think this comes from a point of self-awareness where you mentioned the adaptive perfectionism. So, like I said, it's a very slippery slope. It's very easy to slip from the adaptive perfectionism to go into this pursuit of flawlessness. So I think that point of self-awareness and creating that balance is very important here.
That's true. Very true.
Absolutely. So ma'am, let's understand this question that it's hidden and it's like the elephant in the room and nobody talks about, that where does perfectionism actually come from? What are the experiences or factors that contribute to its development?
Right. So like most things human, right, it's all going to be a mixture of definitely the genetics that you're born with. So we have seen that certain personality styles are more prone to perfectionism than others. and these personality styles are more or less inherited from your parents and grandparents for sure. And then the second very very big side is parental upbringing, the childhood experiences. If the person has grown up with parents who are extremely, again, parents themselves, if they are perfectionist, and if the child has constantly received that message that no, you achieved this, but what about that other part, you could have achieved that as well, so why not you aim for that the next time. So this can sort of create that constant gap for that child, that no matter what I'm doing, I'm still getting a feedback from my mom or my dad or my primary caregiver that no, you can still do more, you can still be more. And that is the founding block for the perfectionism for the adult. As usually in therapy, when we meet people, they are already, they are either in their teenage or their adulthood or well past their adulthood in the middle age. So by that time, these things are even more solidified, the messages that they have picked up as a kid.
Yeah, 100%. And ma'am, I would really like to emphasize on the part that you've talked about the nurture and the childhood experiences. You being my mentor, I really love how you explain that there's a very small one-letter difference between contempt and content.
That's true.
So contempt is the induced feeling of worthlessness and shame and all that, and content at the same point is the feeling of acceptance, the unconditional love, and still at the same time motivating to achieve greater success. So I think
very true.
That one letter difference and a very very slight road or the line between them is what leads to perfectionism, I would say.
Yeah, that's a very nice, that's a very different perspective of looking at it, that contempt versus content. And interestingly, wherever I have spoken about this with clients or even with my friends or family members, one thing that I get a lot of the times as a retort is that, but won't we get stagnated if we don't strive for perfection? How will we progress more in our life, and how will we achieve newer accomplishments? So like all things in psychology, this is definitely a very very layered concept. So let's see what other layers come up in today's discussion.
Absolutely. And such discussions make me so happy, and my first response is मेरे को तो हंसी आ जाती है सबके सामने में, and everybody is like, but we are talking something so intense, Richa. Why are you smiling? Why are you laughing? But these topics are so, like you said, layered, and it's at the same point it's so subjective for different people.
That is true.
It can only be, while it has the same grounds for a lot of people, it can only be, the layers can only be opened in one-on-one sessions in therapy sometimes.
Yes, that's true.
Alright, so ma'am, another thing that I really want to talk about perfectionism, it's like you said, how is it displayed in front of us, or how is it displayed on the outside? So when people say that if we don't strive for perfectionism, what it looks like on the outside is, somebody who's very, very passionate, who loves their work, who has the qualities of paying attention to detail, who's very meticulous, really, really confident. This is the outside picture. But if I had to paint this person on the inside, the inside of a perfectionist, I would paint a little bit of an imposter. So what do you have to say about this?
Yeah, firstly, I think that the analogy of painting the outside picture and inside picture is a very good one, because that also helps us to, at different times, different points, just asking ourselves that, is the picture that I'm portraying to the outside world really matching with the inside thing? So it can be a great point of self-reflection for anyone who is listening to us, our conversation right now. And about coming back to the topic of, okay, how does a person who is very very fixated on perfectionism, how might that person look on the inside? So in a one word, you mentioned imposter, and that is it for many people, that the essentially being the imposter is a feeling where no matter what you do, you keep feeling like a fraud, you feel like you don't deserve it, and you genuinely cannot feel the accomplishments that you have accomplished, or you just attribute it that, oh, it's just luck, I could have done better, I should have done better. So it's a lot of self-beating and putting yourself in these rigid boxes that I have to be this way, I have to achieve this much. And when this escalates even beyond this. So in feeling like an imposter, when that also goes untreated and undiscussed, then you lead to full-blown clinical anxiety or clinical depression, where you are constantly unhappy with yourself, with your life, with your career, many things. And this is one more very important point I would like to make over here, is that generally perfectionism is discussed only in context of work or career. I also think that it can extend in your recreational activities that you're doing, things that you do for fun, or also parenting. You know, that's again a really big area where perfectionism can butt in and really create problems.
Exactly.
So I'm just going all over the place in today's podcast, but coming back to the perfectionism thing, like the internal picture for a person like that is that of extreme anxiety, constant reach for more, and also a little bit of, I think, a dissonance, if I may put it that way. That
100%.
So dissonance. Before I share my thoughts, how do you perceive dissonance, Richa?
I would just like to first share how I'm feeling right now. I just got goosebumps with that explanation. It was so apt, and I feel it's a really unseen picture that a lot of people can't imagine what perfectionism could look like. It's like they're very, very scared, or there's an intense fear of letting themselves off the hook.
Yeah.
So there's a direct link between their self-worth and the work that they get done.
Correct.
So basically the self-beating becomes too high in the other side, the bigger side of the perfectionism funnel, I would say. So that is the dissonance that is created, according to me.
Another thing that I just popped up to my mind as you were talking was that have you ever met someone who is never able to take a compliment? Like whenever you point there's something that they've done great, their first response is that it wasn't such a big of a deal, that person achieved that much. That can also stem from perfectionism, if you think about it that way.
100%. And I think like you said, we're going all over the podcast today, but it's so important and such a layered topic. You mentioned how this could lead to clinical anxiety, clinical depression, or at the same time it leads to intense comparison. With the high standards that you set for yourself, and B, with all the other people who are trying to achieve different things in their life. So that compliment that we're not able to accept has also so many layers to it.
And I would say that perhaps the biggest way that perfectionism hinders a person, or maladaptive perfectionism can hinder, is at its very core, where the person is left unable to do the tasks that the person wants to achieve. So we have seen that procrastination is so clearly and closely linked to perfectionism, isn't it? So Richa,
100%.
Completely off the script, I wanted to ask this to you, that have you ever felt perfectionism in your life so far, and if yes, how have you dealt with it?
To be completely authentic, I think in this world of hustle culture, and especially in our field of psychotherapy, where everybody is trying to get better with the trainings and everything, I feel the general working of newly hatched or newborn therapist is the feeling like an imposter, that maybe I should get training in all the approaches first and then only start.
Yes, I have felt that too.
100%, because the responsibility of someone coming to us with their most deepest vulnerabilities that they are experiencing, which they probably can't open up to anybody else. It's a lot of responsibility in our heads. So I've 100% felt like an imposter, and I feel like I do it even today. But I think seeking therapy really helps for me, and B, I think having a really, really strong mentor and a supervisor that and personally that I could connect to, or that sometimes validates, at the same time is a very strong
guiding
feedback
factor.
giver. So I think that these are the two things that really help me manage that idea of perfectionism or imposter.
Right.
Feeling of an imposter.
Okay. All right. For me, I think perfectionism shows, I mean, in work, definitely, wahan to it's a given that it will show up there. But of course, with time and with doing therapy so much with clients, I have also learned to challenge my own beliefs when they come up that, oh no, I have to give a perfect therapy session to this client. So I have gotten better with navigating that. But for me right now, perfectionism shows up also in terms of fitness, in terms of diet. So if I feel like if a day goes where I have not worked out or I have not taken care of my body at all, then I have a tendency to beat myself up about it, which now again with time I have learned to again bring it to the adaptive side of perfectionism rather than spiral into the maladaptive one. So anyone who is listening to us, we are sharing our personal experiences to make it clear that it's not something that is like completely so rare that no one has experienced. It's a universal experience that everyone goes through. And we really hope that you stick around for the rest of the podcast to also understand more layers of it. So Richa, over to you once again. What is the next topic that we have to discuss in this regard?
Alright, I would just like to mention here is that while we work with a lot of perfectionists, the initial emotion that we feel is frustration, that oh my god, this person is such a perfectionist, especially if we have a boss who tends to be a little perfectionist. But right now, talking about all of these things and realizing how we also try to be perfectionists at times is building up a lot of empathy and thinking of all the situations that I've encountered in the past. It brings up a lot of empathy for how they must be feeling to be a perfectionist in the first place.
That's true. Never thought about it like that.
Absolutely. Okay, so ma'am, since we've talked a lot about what perfectionism could lead to, let's get into a little more detail about how does it contribute to different mental health vulnerabilities like anxiety, depression, procrastination, burnout, and just to name some.
Yes, so I have seen perfectionism mostly with individuals who have struggled with a lot of anxiety and depression, and also in obsessive compulsive disorder or even obsessive compulsive personality disorder, that is OCPD. And the biggest way that I can sum that up would be that perfect is the enemy of good, is something that I always say, that it contributes in a sense where even the things that they're doing in therapy, let's say a client comes in for anxiety and one of the goals that we decide to work upon is procrastination. Even while working on it, the client has a inner narrative that's going on that says that, oh, I should be able to learn this fast. My therapist is walking me through this and we are working through this. So why am I taking so much time to get better, to learn how to do this? So that is also another way that perfectionism can play a role. And in terms of OCPD, I think perfectionism also leads to a lot of rigidity, where rigidity with self, rigidity with others, and also in life in general, that these people often work on a very, very tight set of rules that they cannot even think of that other people are not meeting those rules that they have set. So perfectionism can lead to emotions of anxiety, emotions of frustration, emotions of fury and anger, and ultimately, as we have discussed, emotions of dissatisfaction and depression as well.
Absolutely. And to top all of this, what I've seen is the usual expression of perfectionism on the outside today is burnout.
Yes, absolutely.
A lot of people have started to feel burnout because of this tendency to be perfect.
Oh, I am one of them. I have felt burnout so many times since I started my career as a full-fledged mental health practitioner. So yes, I agree that burnout is the new cold, cough and cold, as they were common when we were kids. Cough and cold was like, oh, ye to hota hi rehta hai. So burnout has
Yeah,
unfortunately become the new age equivalent of that, I think.
absolutely. And if someone listening to us is facing burnout, please know that just resting for 2 days or just sleeping it off on a
Will not
weekend
help.
is not going to be, 100%. It's not a cure for burnout.
Yeah.
So if you need help seeking this, please do.
Mhm.
There's no shame around it. Okay. What I also feel, ma'am, we've seen an exponential rise in
Mhm.
perfectionism and the people who are coming out with perfectionism. Do you think that the shift from a collectivistic to a more individualistic society is leading to that in some way?
Yeah, absolutely. Because I think even if I just take a look at my grandparents' generation, if you were doing comfortably well for yourself, if you had a nice family, a good roof over your head, if you had a few hobbies that you could pursue day to day, if you had a good relationship with the people in your life, that was considered a life well lived. That was a
Yeah.
good life that you are leading. But with the shift in more consumerism, more capitalism, more competitive environment that we are living in right now, that good enough has sort of slid back on the line to mean a failure or something,
Yeah.
that you are an unsuccessful person. So having these things is no longer, it just blows my mind that having these things is no longer a metric of a good life. But having more money, having more status, having these many followers on Instagram, having so many cars or wearing luxury items, these things have now taken grip of our minds. And for most of us, if you ask that, okay, what do I need to do so that I can achieve these things? Well, I need to work more. I need to be more perfect in the way I'm doing things. I need to get that promotion by this age. So if you think about it, perfectionism sneaks up in these ways as well for me.
Yeah, 100%. And I think there's this very, very special untalked layer of perfectionism that I'd like to bring in, is how it shows up in relationships.
Yes.
So because of so much talk around red flag, green flag, and toxic, I'm toxic, my partner is toxic, etc., etc., I feel there is this tendency to be perfect in relationships or not be the red flag in a relationship.
Yeah.
So what are your views on it?
Well, I think it's such a pity, it's such a shame that we are slowly moving away from a culture where we can embrace imperfectionism, where we can see beauty in being flawed. We are, as the day goes, or not a day, but as and how years are passing, we are slowly moving away and away and away from embracing our humanness in its realest form, and sort of forcing ourselves to be like machines who are just to the point, always 100% output, and no matter what happens on the outside, that the output should never be touched in any way. So we are sort of moving away from this and from that humanness and moving towards this machineness, and I don't think that there is a greater pity than that. And like you said, that it is bound to then show up in relationships where neither partner is happy with the other person, and every sign of imperfectionism is labeled as a toxic behavior, because there is no room for imperfection.
Absolutely. While setting boundaries is really, really important to take care of yourself, it's very important to know that nobody is a complete green flag. Everybody has some traits which makes them imperfect, but that is what authenticity is, right? It's just the way to learn how to balance that, how to manage that better.
True.
100%. That self-growth is important, but at the same time, just disregarding somebody for the slightest mistake or the slightest imperfection or the slightest
flaw
episode
that they show.
Absolutely. It's so toxic, I would say. Alright, so since we've talked so much around what perfectionism is and how it could show up in our lives, let's now talk about how to deal with this crazy crown word perfectionism from a therapist's point of view.
So the very first thing, according to me, is just being aware that you struggle with perfectionism, or that your definitions of perfectionism need to be modified. This is a very favorite thing that I use in sessions, where I ask my clients to take pre-existing definitions of anything that we are working with, and I ask them to actually spend some time with it and tweak it in a way that they can still leave parts of it which still make sense to them, but then they are also letting go of the ones that don't. So please, everyone who are listening to us, I invite you to sit with your own definition of perfectionism and see if there is anything that can be modified in them. The second definitely work that would need to happen in that is the thought work, because as we know that the way you think impacts the way the attitudes that you hold about different things in life. So really digging deep into what thought processes are associated with perfectionism, and this is something that is mostly done in one-on-one therapy, but if you can do it by yourself, nothing greater than that too. And finally, there is something of a technique which is called doing something badly. So that is the antidote to procrastination, that we always wait for things to be perfect before we can start off with something, or we leave things midway because we feel like we are not doing a perfect job. So at that point, reminding ourselves that, oh my god, just do it badly, but doing it is more important than doing it perfectly. So what I said earlier, that perfect is the enemy of good. So doing it badly, doing a task, learning a new hobby, even if you're miserable at it, even if you're a colossal, joker as you're doing it, even then doing that task just for the fun of it. These are some different ways that you can start working on breaking that perfectionism trap for yourself.
Absolutely, and I've just noted it down that I'm going to actually write it on a sticky note and put it on the wall of my desk, that do it even badly. if you do it badly, that's okay. Give your 100%, try and do make it as good as you can, but if you're not able to, just do it badly.
Correct. And the chances are that most of the times when you actually do it badly, and when you look back at it once the product is done, then you're like, this is not that bad, this is definitely good. But the problem 100%. Is that if that stage never comes, then you just never know whether it could have turned good or not.
A very simple example that's coming up for me right now is that I didn't want to go and work out today, and I felt ki even if I go, I'm going to be very, I won't do a lot of workout, I won't follow the counts that my instructor is going to give me, then why bother going? And my mom said, just chali to ja, wahan jaake baith ja, do it badly, but at least go.
Correct.
And when I went, I actually realized even if I did something very less, my instructor was, and towards the end when I was talking to her about, how I was feeling a little low today, she said, oh, was it? I couldn't notice. I couldn't see you feeling very low.
Nice.
So, like you said, just even if you start with that notion of doing something badly, but it turns out good.
Correct. So kudos to you for not missing the workout today. And as you were talking about it, one very important thing popped up in my mind, that perfectionism is oftentimes also associated with an all or nothing thinking, which basically means that either you can do a task 100% well, only then it's worth doing, or there is ekdam zero, कि ekdam ही गंदा task हो गया. So a way to beat perfectionism will also be to learning to see the gray of things and learning to stay in that gray zone, not going to the black or the white.
Absolutely. Embracing the imperfections that we all possess. Okay. I think those suggestions were really great, ma'am, and I've noted them down. I would also like to contribute my 3 cents of how I work around perfectionism, and it's worked greatly for me. So this is called the activity of cost-benefit analysis.
Okay.
So the idea is to sit with yourself and reflect on 3 questions that you could ask. First is, are you able to meet the standards that you've set for yourself? So here the idea is to be completely honest and write it down, that are we able to meet the standards that we have set for ourselves. The second question that you need to ponder upon is, do your standards help or do they get into the way of achieving your goal, right? And the third and the last question that you need to think about is, what would happen if you relax your standards a little bit?
Right.
So just doing the cost and the benefit analysis for each of these questions is going to really build up insight and point of self-awareness, where A, you'll recognize that are you being a perfectionist or not, and B, are you able to, even if you are a perfectionist, are you able to manage and balance and cope with that or not?
Right. Sometimes I also think that another question that also could be added here is, would these standards, or would I apply these standards to my best friend or my kid or my spouse?
Yeah.
So that can also be a great way to just, shift the perspective a little bit, because we as human beings, somehow we are harder on ourselves than we are on our closest people. So this can also be a fourth point of inquiry. But I really like the earlier three as well.
100%, and I think that fourth one is going to give you such a beautiful perspective that you wouldn't have thought about otherwise.
Yeah.
So really great addition. Alright, so I think we are almost at the end of our today's podcast, and I love how we could explore so much about perfectionism.
Yes.
Do you have any last thoughts before we wrap up?
Well, the most important giveaway message here would be that we want to take care that we are again having a adaptive definition of perfectionism. So we do not, through our whole conversation, we did not support or promote that you go lax on the goals that you are pursuing, or that 100%. You just stop aiming in the first place. We are only suggesting that if that own standard starts getting in the way of you actually working, or if it stops you from giving yourself a compliment, giving yourself a pat on the back and saying that, oh, I really did a great job with that. If that begins to happen, then definitely consider using the tools that we shared today. And for more personalized work on this, definitely feel free to reach out to AHAM's therapist. We have the link in the description box where you can fill the Google form and get in touch with us. As always, Richa, it was lovely to explore different layers of this topic with you. And this is our third podcast. I look forward to doing more with you. And to everyone who are with us, who stayed put through this 20-25 minute long conversation, we really appreciate your attention and your time. So do leave a comment in the comment section, and if you're new, don't forget to subscribe.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for your time, ma'am. And just to summarize everything, at the end, I would just like to say that saying that embrace your imperfections is very easier said than done.
Yes, of course.
So if you ever feel stuck, just remember that how many times ever you've heard this, it's okay to ask for help and reach out and seek a professional for any kind of help that you would require.
Yes.
All right,
go therapy.
So yes, absolutely, go therapy. Stay tuned for more such interactive, authentic episodes. This is your couch therapist signing out. Thank you so much, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.